Margaret's secret message. Margaret's secret message. Focus question. What message did Margaret carry and why was it important to keep it a secret? Margaret could tell something was wrong the moment she heard Mother's voice. Margaret, come here, Mother called. Margaret set bowls of corn pudding in front of her two little brothers, wiped her hands on her apron, and hurried into the parlor. Mother sat in front of the fire holding a small scrap of paper in her hands. What is it? Another message? Margaret asked. She knew Mother was part of a group of spies helping the Patriots now that the war for independence was going on. She had often seen a red-haired man come by their farmhouse. After he left, Mother would rush to bring information to the Blue Boar Inn, 15 miles away. It was dangerous work, but the British soldiers didn't usually suspect women of being spies. So far, Mother had escaped notice. Margaret could only hope that would continue. Mother held up the scrap of paper. Yes, and an important one. General Howe and Howe and a force of 10,000 men are planning an attack tomorrow at White Marsh, where William is. Margaret gasped. William was Margaret's older brother. He was an aide-de-camp to General Washington. The army had been encamped in the region for several weeks. Margaret didn't want to think about what could happen if they were taken by surprise. Margaret usually stayed home with the boys while Mother passed along these messages. However, Mother had been sick for several days. She still looked tired, pale, and weak. Margaret knew she was worried about William too. Mother, she said, let me go this time. You stay with the boys and rest. No, Margaret, Mother protested. It's too far and too dangerous. Mother was right. The colonies were dangerous right now. British sentries stopped anyone who looked suspicious. Margaret had heard stories of spies who had been arrested and executed. She knew that even a young girl wouldn't be spared if she was caught. Margaret was afraid, but she pictured William huddled by his campfire with the other soldiers. If this message wasn't delivered quickly, many more lives would be at stake. Margaret pushed down the fear inside her. Mother, you're sick. I'll be safe, and I'll be fast, she insisted. Mother nodded and pressed the paper into Margaret's hands. You're right, I am not strong enough to ride that far today. Thank you, Margaret. Margaret turned the paper in her hands. This is blank, she said. Mother smiled. It's written to invisible ink. Just one of our little tricks. Now bring me your clock. Why? Margaret asked, taking her thick red clock from the peg near the room. I'll show you, with a small pair of scissors. Mother cut a few of the stitches on the cloth-covered top button of Margaret's clock. As Margaret watched, Mother lifted the edge of the cloth covering the button and laid the note flat against the bare button. Then she smoothed the clock back under the button and secured it with two neat stitches. There, the message is safe. Mother held up the clock. It looked just the same as before. No one could have ever known there was a paper folded into the top button. Mother took Margaret's face in her hands. Margaret, listen to me, she said. It can be hard to know who to trust these days, so you must not let on. Don't speak to anyone but the innkeeper. How will I let him know I have the message? Margaret asked. Tell him you need to hang up your clock. He'll understand. Margaret felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. She couldn't cry right now. Too many people were depending on her. Be brave, she told herself. Before she could change her mind, Margaret found herself in the stable tightening the girth on her favorite horse, Brown. Quickly, she mounted and rode to the front of the house. The snow fell quickly in her head and shoulders, and coated Brownie's mane. The air beat her cheeks and nose. With her heart already pounding in her chest, Margaret nudged Brownie into a canter and followed the familiar rooted path from the gate out onto the main road. Her journey had begun. The Culper Ring. The Culper Ring was a real-life new network of species organized by George Washington and directed by spy Benjamin Talmadge during the Revolutionary War. The species carried information that had a direct effect on the war. They uncovered and captured British species and passed information to Patriots about surprise redcoat attacks and battle plans. The Culture Ring used creative techniques such as writing in code and using invisible ink. Species would write in lime juice, vinegar, or other liquids that would turn brown when heated to revealing an valuable message. Hurry, hurry! Margaret's mind beat a rhythm and matched the pounding of Brownie's hoofs on the frozen ground. The dirt road stretched before her, curving into the horizon. Fields lay on either side of the road, dotted with frozen white stubble from the hay harvest. It would be late afternoon before he reached the crossroads where the inn stood. The camp was 7 miles beyond that. She knew where Mother had described it. Now she pictured a vast field covered in snow and filled with hungry, half-frozen men huddled by their fires. Margaret slowed Brownies to let the mare breathe. Margaret's feet were numb in the stirrups. She changed hands on the reins every few minutes, sliding the other hand under her cloak. Soon she spotted a British sentry up ahead. The redcoat stood by the side of the road, musket held firmly across his chest. "Halt!" he shouted when he saw her. "What is your business?" Margaret's fingers trembled as she reined Brownie in. "Sir, I'm going to town to look for Dr. Cottingham. My mother is very sick." Her mouth felt dry as she spoke. The soldier narrowed his eyes. Margaret wondered if he could hear her heart pounding. She winded her eyes and hoped she looked innocent. The soldier scolded and stepped forward as if to grab Brownie's reins. Margaret gasped, but his hands stayed on his musket, and he jerked his head. "Right on," he commanded. Letting out a great breath, Margaret released the reins and urged Brownie into a gallop. She bent over Brownie's neck, sweating under her cloak as the horse's powerful body stretched out beneath her. "Please hurry, girl," she begged, pushing the tired horse on. At last, the blue boar rose up in front of her. Margaret drew up at the door and threw Brownie's reins over the rail in front. Inside, the inn was warm and steamy. It smelled of the stew cooking over the open fireplace. Farmers and soldiers were scattering among the tables, and loud leather and the clink of metal dishes filled the air. Margaret hesitated as she stepped over the threshold. There were so many people. Could they see her secret? Any one of them could be a loyalist spy for the British. Her finger fluttered to the button with the note, and she forced herself to put her hands at her side. Margaret kept her cloak gathered around her and her hood hiding her face as she made her way inside. Yes, the innkeeper was a rough-looking man with long sideburns. "Sir, was that man at the near table looking at her?" What if the innkeeper didn't understand? How could she pass on the message without anyone noticing? "Yes?" the innkeeper asked again, impatiently this time. "Please, sir, I need to hang up my cloak. It is very wet. My mother wouldn't want me riding home in a wet cloak." She let her eyes meet the innkeeper's as she held out the wet cloak and gently touched the top button. She silently begged him to understand. She saw his eyes flick over the cloak and button as understanding dawned on his face. "Yes, warm yourself, girl," she growled. "I'll dry your cloak myself." He took the cloak and turned his back to the room. After several long minutes, she dropped it over her shoulders again. Looking down, Margaret saw that the fabric covering the top button was loose. Get yourself home in this cold, the innkeeper said. Tell your mother that all will be well. Margaret felt a thrill to go right to her heart as she secured her cloak and tucked the loose fabric under the button. The message was delivered. The men could prepare for the attack, and perhaps William would come back to them one day. Other side, Margaret mounted Brownie once again, relieved that she had completed her mission. She could hardly wait to get home and tell Mother. She didn't even mind the thought of the long, cold miles ahead. Sybil Ludington. Sybil Ludington was only 16 when she rode her horse through the night on April 26, 1770, to warn members of her father's regiment of an attack by British troops on the nearby town of Danbury. When the messenger bearing the crucial information about the attack arrived at the Ludington farm, he was too tired to ride any further. So Sybil mounted her own horse and rode between 20 and 40 miles, 32 to 64 kilometers from farm to farm, rousing the soldiers so they could gather to ward off the attack. The Peridot soldiers arrived too late to defeat the British, but Sybil's strength and